Huh?
A nice party the other night.
Yeah, that was nice. You know, I always enjoy that. But that was the best. That was, you know, the kids were not too fun.
No, yeah.
But it was nice. I always enjoy that party. You know, a lot of good people, nice people.
In case anybody needs these tonight.
Okay. Tissues?
Tissues.
We're crying.
This is the pre-council meeting for Monday, February 5th, 2018. And we'll begin with roll call. Mayor Odekirk.
Here.
Councilman Dickinson.
Here.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Here.
Councilman Girl.
Here.
Councilman Hugg.
Here.
Councilman Morris.
Here.
Councilman Mudrin.
Here.
Councilwoman Quillman.
Here.
Councilman Turk.
Here.
Okay, and first on our agenda is citizens to be heard on agenda items. We do have a few. We have Pete McLennigan. He's going to speak on 6318, which is an ordinance approving a variation of use to allow continuation of a 2-unit and R3 1 and 2 family use within an R2 single family zoning district located at 207 Bridge Street.
Pete McClanahan, 505 Catherine, Joliet. I'm happy to go first, but I didn't know if you want to hear the petitioner. Part of
This is time for citizens to speak. The petitioner, if you want to speak, will address it.
Very good. I'm representing Stepping Stones. We're a neighbor of the petitioner. So for my involvement with Stepping Stones over 30 years, we've occupied properties at 205 Bridge Street and 501 Broadway. In that time, the petitioner's property at 207 Bridge Street, to my knowledge, has always been operated as a 2-unit. And, you know, in discussions with them about the possible use of the vacant lot that belongs to the petitioner and is adjacent to both of our properties and could potentially, by this consideration, improve both properties. That was our interest, and kind of one thing led to the other. And honestly feel bad that what came to light was that there was an error over time where that property was not classified as a 2-unit when it should have. So Stepping Stones is here to support that petition. We hope that the council votes to approve staff recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Diane Hacker.
Hello, my name is Diane Hacker, 3226 Caring Court, Joliet, and I'm here in support of an honorary sign for my dad, Bob Hacker. My dad served on the Joliet City Council for 34 years. He has many accomplishments, some of which is that he brought the K-9 unit to Joliet, Silent Witness, which is now Crime Stoppers, more street lights to citizens, and worked for the best equipment for our police and firemen. He also led the campaign to dump the dead, in which to pay off bonds with 5% of the funds from the riverboats. And when Bob left the council, Joliet was debt-free. But what my dad is most proud of is his annexation of Essington Road from Caton Farm north to develop the mall. I have an awesome letter of support for an honorary sign from Jim Haller, Joliet's retired Community and Economic Development Director, that I will summarize. Bob spent many evenings over a 2-year period with landowners gaining their trust and cooperation. Anyone who has done this work knows that securing voluntary annexation petitions from property owners is a difficult task. He then proceeded to work with Hallmark Development to build a mall for Joliet, and only because of Bob's tireless efforts, the Louis Joliet Mall was built. Almost every citizen has benefited from our mall with either a job or shopping, but most of all, the city of Joliet has made hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes. I hope you will vote yes to have an honorary sign for Councilman Robert G.
Thank you.
I'm going to adjust the mics for just...
Sure.
Not picking them up.
Thanks, Pauline.
Next we have Damian Stunich.
Hello, good evening, Mayor, City Council members. My name is Damon Stunich. I live at 430 North Center Street. I'm part of the group that recently purchased the former Joliet Catholic Diocesan headquarters. It's bordered by Bridge Street Center and Summit. We have invested a rather large amount of money into the project to develop a winery there, some professional office space, and some event space. We have a vested stake in improving this neighborhood. We're seeing good things happen in that neighborhood. There were a number of houses that were in less than satisfactory shape that were gut rehabbed. One recently sold for over $150,000. That's a real improvement in that area. I'm here tonight to talk about Council Memo 63-18207 Bridge Street. While the motion to deny at the zoning board was a tie vote, I would ask the City Council to deny the petition for a variation of use from R2 to R3 for that home located at 207 Bridge Street. That area was downzoned 20 years ago to single family, and it was downzoned for good reason. That house sits on a postage stamp sized lot. It does not and never has had adequate parking according to city codes. In addition, there is no street parking on Bridge Street. While the petitioner talked about 2 other lots he owns north of 207 Bridge Street and wanted to donate to Stepping Stones, they are separate lots and have nothing to do with the lot that 207 currently occupies. You can look at the aerial maps of the property in your council packets regarding that. So please keep those separate in your deliberations. Speaking of that property, which they have owned for, based on what I can see, 2.5 years, the driveway in back is not asphalt per city code. I believe it's gravel from what I heard at the prior zoning meeting. There is a front door that, I don't know if the window is broken or there's a curtain hanging out. It looks like there's 2 boarded up windows. The building's an eyesore. This investor knows the zoning. From what I understand, they own quite a few properties in Joliet. They're not new to the Joliet's rental market. They know the codes. They should have known about zoning before they bought it. The Cunningham Neighborhood Council pleaded with the city that they did not want any more absentee landlords in the area, and you voted down the request. Oh, I'm sorry, I have to step back here. This is the same argument that the city used on 925 North Broadway across the street from the ice cream stand, when an out-of-town investor bought the property and did a lot of work on it before he checked the zoning. The Cunningham Neighborhood Council pleaded with the city, and they did not want any more absentee landlords in the area, and you voted down the request to go from R2 to R3, although it was a 2-unit for years. It's not that I'm totally against rental housing. There's a lot of rental housing in Joliet. This area has always had quite a few owner-occupied R3 properties. I grew up in that neighborhood. Talking with the leaders of St. John's and the Cunningham Neighborhood Council, all agree that owner-occupied is the way to go. If you're going to have a 2-unit, it's a way for the owner to recoup their investment and take a stake in the property. Past practice has demonstrated that owner-occupied buildings take better care of the property and do a better job screening tenants. While on the subject of tenants, the police had 5 calls in 2017 for the property located at 207 Bridge Street. The calls ranged from domestic trouble to aggravated discharge of firearms. Is this the type of rental property any of you want in your neighborhood?
So you have to form a time limit. Can you wrap it up, please?
Oh, did I go past it? Okay.
You're there, yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry. Okay, well, I understand the owner bought that property for around $50,000. I am sure right now with the improved rental market, if you were to deny it, he would still make a profit on selling it. Again, I ask you to please deny the request for the variance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Nick and Kathy Macris.
Good evening, Nick Macris, 22 South Midland Avenue. First, I want to thank the council for the effort and energy that they put into Council Member 5518, which is the Nick Yitos at the corner of Midland and Jefferson. I did have the chance to address the Zoning Board of Appeals on January 18th. Regrettably, we had not heard as a neighborhood of the council's meeting wherein the decision was made to grant Nick Yidos the opportunity to occupy the old Bob and Sis. I applaud the council's efforts to keeping vacant properties off of Jefferson Street, but the basis for my concern is traffic impact on Midland Avenue. We have Thigpen and Dirksen School to the south. We have Pershing School to the north. There are large numbers of kids that traverse the sidewalk on the east side of Midland Avenue going north to the crossing guard at Jefferson and Midland. What we have in the site plan that's been presented to us is an entrance and an exit to the Nick Yidos property off of Midland Avenue. It's the southbound most curb cut that Bob and Sis currently has, with an exit only onto Jefferson. And coupled with the exit curb cut from the currency exchange across the street to the west, we have a serious traffic situation whereby currency exchange customers attempting to go north onto Midland Avenue block the southbound Midland lanes. And I anticipate the same situation with southbound customers leaving Nick Yidos attempting to cross the northbound lanes and to go south. Now at 8 a.m. and at 3 p.m. we have excessive traffic on Midland Avenue, and those are the hours that the school starts and concludes. It's not at all unusual for both lanes of northbound Midland Avenue to be backed up from Jefferson to Marion Street during the 3 o'clock dismissal hour. And I can anticipate a terrible situation with all of the students that use our sidewalks crossing the curb cuts for the Yidos place as they go to the crossing guard at Jefferson and Midland. At the Zoning Board of Appeals, Mr. Hennessy made it abundantly clear that we had come to the wrong meeting to discuss the virtues of having a fast food restaurant at that corner, because that is something that was, quote, a done deal by the city council. And those of us, there were 5 of us that came and spoke that day to the zoning board and identified the fact that none of us had ever been made aware that the council was deliberating on having this venue go into that corner, that the process did not include that. So regrettably, we went to the wrong meeting and we weren't invited to the right meeting. I just want to speak on behalf of those of us on Midland Avenue who already deal with excessive traffic. I would encourage you to seriously consider the impact of the drive-through on the already congested Midland Avenue traffic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Jan Noworski.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm here representing the Reedwood Neighborhood Association, of which I am the president. I am here to back Nick Macris and then clarify some things. We are not, Reedwood Neighborhood Association is not against Nick's Yidos going in there. I saw the existing Nick's Yidos in Palos Heights. I saw the pictures and I actually drove by it the other day. And Mr. Torrey of our planning division told me that the one that is going to be built here is even going to be nicer. It's going to be a great addition to our Jefferson Street corridor. I want to emphasize to everybody on the council, though, what Nick just said is our only concern. There is a currency exchange on the west side of the intersection of Midland and Jefferson. For some reason, way back when, they allowed them to exit onto Midland and make a left-hand turn going north, or they can go south on Midland. When they turn north on Midland, they stop right in the middle of those southbound lanes, causing people that turn off of Jefferson southbound to stop. Sometimes there's 2 or 3 or 4 cars backed up under Jefferson because it's very close to the intersection. If you let Nick's Yidos have a exit on Midland, making a left-hand turn going south, just the opposite of the problem there, that will cause a double problem. It's just unconscionable how sometimes that traffic backs up there because of the turning choices of people. I'm saying as a president of the Reedwood Neighborhood Association, full speed ahead, but take serious consideration into what you're going to allow as far as traffic dumping out onto Midland from Nick's, which is the situation is in front of us right now, or it maybe even address or bring back up the problem with the currency exchange people causing a backlog onto Midland and all that. But we love the fact that Jefferson's going to get beautified. The Neighborhood Association does. We just think that you have a chance now to correct a problem that might be coming up down the line if you don't know about it now. So we're letting you know that there's a problem that can exist unless you address it now with changes or directions or directions to the plat that is going to be presented to you guys to vote on. We hope that you take in consideration what Nick said and what I just said. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mayor, just a quick comment.
Yes.
Just so I understand, so the issue with that Gene and Nick had brought up, it's not with the business, it's with the drive-through? Is that it?
Correct.
Okay.
It's actually not even with the drive-through, it's with the entrance and exits into the property.
Okay.
If you allow, let's talk about Nick's. If you allow traffic.
Because that was Councilmember 29, I had to go back and look. That was Councilmember 29/18, which we just approved a drive-through.
We're not against the drive-through.
Oh, you're not?
We're not against the drive-through. We're against allowing left and right-hand traffic turns, onto Midland.
Okay.
We think that you can change that before it gets built. They are going to amend one of the two curb cuts on both Midland and Jefferson to allow just one on each, on Jefferson, one on Midland. We're going to remove one. The one you leave, consider making it from Nick's a right-hand only going north exit. Make them people go around or the block or whatever. Do not let them turn left. And then I would suggest somewhere down the line we talk about the currency exchange, not allowing people to turn left out of the currency exchange. But that's what we're not objecting to the business. We think it's going to be great. We're not objecting to a drive-through. We're saying you're going to have a traffic problem if you don't take care of it while Nick's is getting built. That's what we're saying.
Mayor, just a comment to you.
Yes.
Zoning board had asked for a traffic study to be done, so I was wondering if that had been done yet before we even vote on it, because I don't have a copy of it if it was.
David, the recommendation is going to be to table this tonight or tomorrow night. Is that correct?
Yes, there's other comments, though, that I think, in fact, Mr. Hanson would like to add, representing Nick Euros.
Mayor, members of the City Council, Michael Hanson, attorney in Joliet. I am now representing Nick Euros, and I guess it's appropriate for me now, if I can, Mayor, just to make a few comments as long as this matter's been raised.
Sure.
Let me get a couple things straight. First of all, this matter is really before the Zoning Board of Appeals right now, okay? And this hearing is going to be on February 18th. Yes, in answer to Councilwoman Cuomo's question, we've hired Rudiger and Tonelli to do a traffic analysis of this particular situation. The questions that have come up are foremost in our minds. We're working with staff, Rush Lubash, Jim Trisna, with respect to the ingress, egress out of our property. All those matters are proper before the Zoning Board of Appeals. So right now, from my analysis and my recommendation to the council is, it's actually premature for this matter to be even considered by the City Council right now. We're very aware of the residents' concerns, very aware of what the situation is. We're looking into everything. They've just retained me and Rudiger and Snelly. My recommendation tonight, for tomorrow night, I should say, at the council meeting would be to table the request that's on the agenda for another month. Let us keep working with the staff, number one, go back to the Zoning Board of Appeals on the 18th and make sure that this is right for all involved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak on an agenda item? Okay, so seeing none, I'll refer to the city manager to actually review the rest of tonight's agenda.
Mayor and council, if we could I I think on the council committee reports, we'll wait for tomorrow. I think for those reports, or so if we can, let's turn to the consent agenda.
Right.
We have some minutes, payroll, and one position vacancy listed under consent agenda. Is there any questions on any of those items, either A through E on consent agenda? If not, I think you've heard quite a bit on the motion to rescind. And let me just turn to our corporate counsel. This particular motion to rescind did come up because of issues raised on the order of action to be taken. And because the drive-through came to the council first prior to the Zoning Board of Appeals completing their full action, one option for the council to consider could be to rescind that drive-through permit, but then you'd also have to reconsider it after the Zoning Board of Appeals finishes up. However, as kind of mentioned tonight by Mr. Hanson, another option for tomorrow's night could be to table it until the Zoning Board of Appeals acts. But that was the intent here, is to give the council another option. Anything else, Mr. Shanahan?
No.
Any questions on that item? Council Memo 5518.
How did this cart get before the horse?
Well, unfortunately, sometimes there is an error made in the process, and that's one thing we're going to work on, avoiding that happen in the future, and making sure that prior to any drive-through permits, those do not take place until any action by the Planning Commission or ZBA take place. Keep in mind, the only reason the ZBA is considering that is because several variances have been requested. And so, however, at that last meeting, they did table it. They wanted a traffic analysis done, but for whatever reason, in error, the drive-through permit came to the council first, but we won't let that happen in the future.
Well, now, if the ZBA grants the variances following the traffic study that they requested, and we don't rescind this ahead of time, doesn't that mean that Nick's can go right ahead? You know, even without consideration of whether they're turning left or right on Reed Street, which seems to be the main concern. Or Midland, I'm sorry, Main Street. Main Street, USA.
I would think we'd have to rescind it and just do the whole thing over after we go to zoning board. And I would like to see the traffic study before the council meeting. As soon as it's done, I would like a copy. And I'm sure the rest of the council would also like that. I can't speak for you, but I'm just.
If I could address the council one more time, Council.
Well, let me ask one more question, Mike, real quick.
I want to answer your first.
I want to follow up my question with the city manager first. My point being, can they retroactively put restrictions if we let this hang out there? Can the ZBA put restrictions on it? We've approved it. Now, can they restrict it retroactively if we don't rescind it?
Let me just say, you know, at this point, the ZBA is certainly looking at a lot more than just the drive-through. So certainly they're weighing in on all things that the traffic analysis is going to consider. They're also looking at negotiations between city staff and the applicant and trying to improve safety features there at the corner. So they're really doing the more comprehensive review, whereas the drive-through is very focused on one specific matter. But once again, the proper procedure would have been for the ZBA to act first and then the drive-through permit to come to the council.
Because we're showing currently a council approval of a proposed drive-through that goes in certain directions and dumps in certain areas. That's what I'm saying. Shouldn't we be rescinding that?
And I think there's certainly an argument. And I do believe that I heard at the neighborhood association that someone on the ZBA said, well, this is a done deal. And it is my understanding that comment was made because they had heard the council had approved the drive-through permit. And there may have been that feeling, well, you know, you'd already approved it. So what are we doing as a ZBA? So yes, again, that's one of the actions that you could take, is to rescind tomorrow night and kind of put it back in the appropriate process that it'll follow going forward on similar type situations.
First of all, what the city manager Hales said a minute ago, I think was very correct on what the zoning board of appeals is doing. They're taking a comprehensive look at the whole situation. They're the proper body to do that. Now, you've opened the door to me to give you a legal answer, which is rarely given to your two questions. And my legal answer to both your questions would be both no. You know, no, you can't do what you mentioned on the drive-through permit. That's already been done, but effectively, the drive-through permit is not effective right now because they don't have the variances to do what they need to do. Now, your first question, I'm trying to exactly remember, but that answer would have been no also. So my point to the council at this point is the drive-through permit, the whole process is really not effective at all until the zoning board adopts the variances, if they do, on the 18th of February. See, a lot of what's being discussed tonight, to be very honest and candid, is not of council action, okay? It's all under the zoning board of appeals. And we can't effectively do the drive-through permit until we get the variances. But like City Manager Hales indicated, and like what we have committed to the council, we're working with city staff, we're working with the residents to make sure that we have proper safety, proper traffic methods, not only for our site, but when you get the whole picture, as Mr. Nahorsky happened to say, there are a lot of issues with the property owner across the street. I think that's part of the whole problem here.
So I guess my direct question. Go ahead.
But it came back for us to be rescinded because of the traffic pattern. So with the drive-through that we approved, with new information coming back to us about traffic patterns, that could affect the drive-through as it is now. So it should come back to us for to be rescinded because of the new information.
The drive-through essentially is not even in effect at this point in time because we don't have the variances.
But that's what we approved, so that's part of it. That's part of the problem.
I don't know that I legally agree with that characterization.
Well, Marty?
I think we're talking, you know, some legal semantics here, nonetheless important.
Marty?
I would have to say that, I think to answer Councilwoman Hugg's question, to answer your question, if the zoning board approves it prior to the next council meeting, it's a done deal. And I think that's what you were asking.
And we're asking the council just to wait to see what the zoning board does, undertake their job to make sure that it's correct. And then if we need to come back to council, well, we'll come back to the council.
But the question is, if the zoning board approves the variances, then it's too late for us to rescind.
If it's, yes.
If we disagree or agree with them,
Right.
they can, you know, if we say, no, you shouldn't turn left, you should only turn right, it's too late to add that codicil to the, to the permit, special permit.
It would be.
Not necessarily. You can go back then. The zoning board may say, take the permit back to the council. You know, we got a couple issues here. I mean, certainly the drive-through permit is, in my opinion, it's not really an issue. You've heard the issue with Mr. Nahorsky. It's the issue of the access on the Midland Avenue. You know, whether there's a drive-through permit or not.
Right, but does the proposed drive-through and the pattern, you know, the engineering of the drive-through, does it currently allow for and require turning both directions off the property?
Well, the drive-through permit's separate than the access permit. Two separate things.
But is it allowed?
And that's not really a subject for debate before this body, either now or in the future.
All right.
The simple request, Councilman, is let us go back to the zoning board. Let us continue to work with the residents and the staff to see if we can get an amicable solution. I think we're going to arrive at that solution.
We're going to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're in the middle of the
I just want to say very quickly, the purpose for the ZBA meeting was a variance from the mandated 20 parking spots on site to 16. That was the purpose for the January 18th meeting.
David and Marty, can you give tomorrow when the vote's up, if you can get a rundown and a legal opinion, Marty, on how our action affects this?
Sure.
Thank you.
Mayor and council, next tomorrow night, there will be two public hearings. We have memo 5718 and 5818, both of which have to do with the establishing of a joint special service area. The first one will be Smith Avenue from Center Street to Broadway, and then Charity Avenue, Knoll Avenue to Retta Court. Notices have been sent out, encouraging anyone who wants to come and speak at the public hearing, either for or against the establishment of these special service areas, to come and address the council tomorrow night. Is there any questions or comments on either of these special service area public hearings for tomorrow night? If not, moving on, under the section of ordinances, a council memo 60-18 has to do with the annexation of 10 acres located at 1150 Northeast Frontage Road. Classification B3, general business zoning, and approval of an annexation agreement. This is for a proposed expansion of a union building along the frontage road and in front of some surrounding residential areas. Are any questions on this proposed annexation and the accompanying annexation ordinance and the rezone? Moving on, Council Memo 61-18, an ordinance to reclassify 645 North Bluff Street from R3, 1 and 2 family residential to R2 single family residential zoning. Any questions on this memo?
And I'm the petitioner, may I speak?
Step up, please. Were you here for the beginning of the meeting when they asked for public comment?
Yeah. Yes, I was, but I was told that I could talk as the petitioner.
Okay.
Because,
name and address, please.
Scott Libriger, Proton Properties, 220 North Broadway.
Thank you.
I'll make this short. My family's been in the rental business since 1940. I'm a hands-on landlord. I was there the night of the incident that they spoke of. I've got 35 full-time employees. I've met with most of the councilmen and women over the years. I've been doing this for 32 years, and my family's been doing it forever. I purchased this property, was listed with the MLS. The former owner passed away unexpectedly, and his family listed the property. It was for sale for about a year. It's not in the best neighborhood in Joliet, but I've been doing this a long time, and I like Joliet. So we took on the project. I got my transfer stamps, did everything I was supposed to do, and the city of Joliet said it had the proper zoning. We pulled our building permits, we rehabbed the building, we rented it out. Fast forward to last year, I was approached about donating part of the lot, or they asked to buy it. I said I'd donate it because we were going to split that off in this spring and do asphalt parking on the lot directly to the north of this parcel. It's a connecting lot. Combine the pins and it'll give it the proper parking it needs. It has paved parking now in the alley. So that's it in a nutshell. It was built as a 2-unit in 1900 and was inadvertently downzoned. And that's what the research department in the city of Joliet said. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to follow up, Planning Commission made a unanimous recommendation for adoption of this ordinance. Moving on, Council Memo 62-18, ordinance approving vacation of a portion of Old Richard Street. City staff is recommending that be tabled indefinitely in order to allow staff to continue its analysis and to arrange a future meeting with the property owners and their legal counsel, so that more time is needed for that dialogue. Is there any questions on Memo 62-18? If not, moving on to Council Memo 63-18, ordinance approving a variation of use to allow continuation of a 2-unit, an R3, 1 and 2 family use within an R2 single family zoning district located at 207 Bridge Street. I'd like to ask the Community Development Director, Kendall Jackson, to just come forward. The vote on this matter was a split vote, 3-3 ZBA, so I thought it would be helpful for Mr. Jackson to comment on the split vote and the recommendation of staff versus the ZBA on this, on the applicant's request. Mr. Jackson.
Mr. Hales, which one was this again?
Yes, this was memo 6318, ordinance approving a variance of use. This is the one where it was a 3-3 vote by the ZBA. Just want to have you help clarify to the council what staff's recommendation is on this council memo and any other background you wish to provide.
Yes, this was 207 Bridge Street, I believe.
Yes.
The zoning board of appeals had a split vote. So it's coming to the city council, no recommendation from the zoning board. The history here is that the property was built, we believe, as a 2-unit back in 1900 and used as a 2-unit throughout its history. It does have a rental inspection certificate that's been approved and is currently valid. This was an incorrect downzoning on the part of the city back in 1998. Not quite sure what happened with whoever owned the property then in terms of their understanding of what the city was attempting to do, which was downzone the property, which was incorrect at that time. As the owner then did not come forward to indicate that the property was a 2-unit, it did get downzoned. And now they're seeking to rectify that by having a variation of use approved to allow continuation as a 2-unit. I'm not sure at this point what went into the split vote at the zoning board level. We didn't get much in the way of discussion from the various members in terms of why they were voting one way versus the other. The staff, however, is recommending approval of the continuation of the 2-unit based on its history, based on the valid rental inspection certificate.
If I could clarify, the comments that Mr. Lieberscher made were for this ordinance, or this proposal?
6318.
6318, not 6118.
Just so the council.
That clears it up. I was confused.
I got one here today.
Yeah, question. Kendall, historically, this building appears to have been built as a 2-unit, right?
Correct.
And has it ever been anything other than a 2-unit over the years?
Not to our knowledge.
Yes.
Kendall, is this planning to be a owner occupied, what, do we know?
No, I don't believe so, no. I think both units are rental units. I do not believe the owner resides at this property.
Thank you.
Any other questions from City Council?
Mayor, I have one more.
Yes.
Just to clarify for me, Kendall, are there 2 renters in it right now? Or I should say, were there prior to the remodeling? The previous owner, did he live there?
No, he got his rental.
All right, so the previous owner owned it, but did not live there too?
I believe it's always been a rental.
Not owner occupied?
Correct, yes.
All right, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, moving on, Council Memo 6418. The owner, the business Fit for All, is requesting a special use permit to allow massage therapy services within a part of the tenant space located at 2723 West Jefferson Street. Is there any questions on this ordinance? If not, Council Memo 6518, ordinance approving a variation of use to allow continuation of an existing 2-unit, a R3 1 and 2 family use in an R2 single family zoning district located at 806 Sherwood Place. Any questions? Council Memo 6618, ordinance approving a second amendment to a special use permit to extend the billboard removal date.
Mayor,
Yes.
I know the petitioners are here. I have a couple questions for them, if it's proper that they could come.
Step forward, please.
Chris Lupo, Lamar Advertising, 500 North Michigan Avenue, Chicago. Basically, the sign was built in 1973, and since then, there's been no complaints about the sign. Additionally, at the ZBA meeting, there was no one from the public who voiced any objections against the petition. 75% of the advertising space on the sign is used by local businesses in Joliet. So this indicates to us that there's a need for affordable advertising medium in this area. Billboard advertising has the lowest average cost per 1,000 impressions. Billboards are 61% more effective or affordable than radio, 79% more affordable than TV, 84% more affordable than newspapers, and 91% more affordable than direct mail. The sign is consistent with other signs in the area. There's tons of businesses along Joliet, in Joliet, that are so far set off the road that a lot of people don't know that they're there. And these signs give these businesses the opportunity to be seen and make the public aware of their services. Advertising coverage is limited in this area. We have only one other sign within 1.5 miles along Jefferson Street, and it's just right next door. Lamar is aware of the aesthetics concerns of the city for signs, and this is why Lamar inspects our signs annually to remove surface rust and repaint the structures when needed. Lamar has removed 26 antiquated signs throughout the Joliet area to keep down with the proliferation of signs in Joliet. In fact, we just recently removed another sign within 650 feet west of this existing sign. And although the sign did not interfere with the operation or site plan for the business owner, the property's hands were tied in having to agree with the mandatory condition to terminating the lease and having the sign removed. He wanted to get his business up and running. So in closing, just want to reiterate, the sign has been in place since 1973. There's been no complaints against the sign by neither the public nor the city. 75% of the advertising is used by local businesses in Joliet. Lamar has been diligent in keeping the sign in good repair and appearance, and the owner's hands were tied when he had to agree with the strict conditions of the special use that he had. With this all said, Lamar and the property owner, Mr. Michael Bergstone, is looking for this council to extend the life of the sign.
If I could, I just wanted to clarify the ordinance. The initial and the primary ordinance would be to deny the special use permit request. However, in the council packet, there's also an ordinance if the council wanted to make an amendment to allow for an extension on the billboard. Is there any questions council has either for the Community Development Department?
Oh, Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
I read the whole 31 pages here, and back in 2003, the amendment was removed to allow it to continue in 2009. And then in 2009, came back again for another amendment because this is non-conforming, and the city council allowed it to continue until 2018 of April. And because there was an agreement with the current advertiser and they couldn't get out of that legal agreement. So on page 10 of this memo here, it says it was legally unable to terminate the lease due to the advertisers, and they agreed to take it down in 2018. Now, in April of 2009, on page 25, it was stated that the J.D. Ryder did not want the sign to remain, period. And that's why they agreed to let them go until—
J.D. Ryder is here.
May I finish here, please?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Until April of 2018, and it's stated right here in the minutes from the meeting. So, but at that time, again, they were not legally able to terminate the lease. So therefore, the amendment was amended in 2009 with the agreement to terminate in April of 2018, and that's on page 26.
Correct.
So since it's non-conforming and we're trying to revitalize these Jefferson Street corridor, I would say that your time is up as far as I'm concerned.
Questions?
The owner is here. correct?
Yes, sure.
Thank you. My name is Mike Bergstone. I'm the owner-operator of JD Byrider at 2323 West Jefferson, which is the location that the sign is located on. We opened our business in 2003, and one of the requirements of the special use permit to operate a car dealership, among others, was that that sign be removed in 2000, I think you said 2009. We signed off at that particular time because obviously our primary goal was to obtain that special use permit. In 2009, I came back and presented to this particular board, obviously some different folks, but and expressed my issue that I had a lease with Lamar through 2018. It's important to keep in mind that this is a lease that I simply inherited upon purchasing the particular parcel. And certainly the dollars I received as a result of this lease were not significant relative to the dollars I receive, operating my used car dealership. I'm not sure why it says in there in the minutes that I wanted it removed. I simply expressed at the time a relative indifference to having it removed if it should jeopardize my standard or my special use permit to operate a car sales facility. So that's what I meant by, if it has to go in order to maintain my special use permit, then so be it. But at this time, I would obviously prefer to be able to keep the sign on my property and continue to, for my special use permit to be in full effect. I haven't heard any complaints as to the sign being there. And certainly as a small business owner, we enjoy the rents we receive from the lease that I have with Lamar, which is up in 2018. So I'm here today to just ask if you have any questions, concerns.
Questions?
I would just comment, if I understand this correctly, David or Kendall, this is all part of the regentrification and beautification of Jefferson, something that was started some years back. There was a variance given. Now, I would object to the characterization made that their hands were tied. This was an upfront agreement, more than a handshake, where we allowed them, a temporary variance in 2009. Then it was brought to our attention, and well, actually, I've got to honor until 18, and we've been over backwards at that point to give another, am I correct so far? Another 9 years, and right now the lease is up. And the goal of Jefferson Street is to continue to turn it around with all the new buildings, and, highway billboards, if you will, just don't belong there. And I think that if there was something in that 2003 agreement that we agreed to do as a city, and now said we changed our mind, I think there'd be some screaming at us saying you got to honor what you did in 2003. So I do object to the characterization that their hands were tied. And that was part of the negotiation process, and the city gave them a temporary reprieve on it.
Step up, please.
When I mentioned hands were tied, I said it was the property owner's hands were tied. He wanted to get his business going. So,
no, I understand that.
So he said, I'll do what I have to do to get the business going. So that's what I meant by,
right.
It wasn't the city's hands were tied. No,
I understand that you were referring to him, that he was trying to get a special use to open up a new used car dealership. Right. And his choice was either open it up without the billboard, or not open it, or open it up with, or not open it up with it standing there. And there was an agreement made, and there was even given an extension of 9 years or 6 years from the time you open. So that was an agreement that was made, and it needs to be honored, just like we have to honor our side of the agreement.
Any other questions?
Sir, if I may, I certainly understand your perspective. When I came to you in 2009, when I indicated that my hands were tied, it was simply a reflection of the fact that I had a lease with Lamar through 2018, which I was unaware of when I got the special use permit in 2003. You were kind enough at that time to say, listen, you have an obligation legally with Lamar. I wasn't making any money off this thing to speak of anyway, so it was really a non-issue.
A little confusion here. I think the term, the phrase hands are tied is popular apparently.
Well, we'll just
I have no idea
that.
what you said in 2009. I wasn't here. That was strictly with the original statement just tonight, that, it was indicating that there was something, I don't know, leverage or, something not quite right with the deal. It was a deal made so that you could open your business. And in 2009, there was kind of an oops. Gosh, nobody really checked into this. I've got to honor this agreement or there could be legal action on me. And the city said, Okay, we'll give you another 9 years.
You're right. Hands
Now-
of time is
right.
totally probably not, that probably is not reflective of.
And now the lease is up, and
The
you
lease
can go
is
back
up.
to the original agreement.
And all I'm asking you today is that we'll be allowed to keep that there. Obviously, we're taxpayers in town. We've been here for, over 15 years, and we enjoy the revenues associated with that lease. That's all I'm asking.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thanks so much for your time. I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Council Memo 6718, ordinance repealing resolution number 7213 regarding the annexation of 8 parcels near the former Silver Cross Hospital located at Maple Road and Hebbard Street. The reason this repeal is being brought back to the council is that there was apparently an error in the PIN numbers associated with the parcels. There was a reliance of staff, and I would think too, the hospital on the engineering firm who was charged with preparing the legal descriptions and everything. However, it was brought to our attention, both parties, when it got to the county officials' hands that there was an error. Hence, we have to go back and correct that. So this repeal ordinance has been prepared for your consideration. Any questions? Moving on, ordinance declaring certain properties as public nuisances. Just want to comment, we are working to expand on the information you receive on each of these properties going forward, including the extent of communication with property owners, even if we don't get a response. So we are trying to kind of expand that detail prior to the council adopting an ordinance that will ultimately lead to the demolition of properties declared a public nuisance. Any questions on 6818? 6918, ordinance authorizing the extension of the police officers' eligibility list. And that was on the Public Safety Committee's meeting earlier with a positive recommendation for the council. Under this section, any questions on that eligibility list?
I think we all agreed on that one.
Yep. Section on resolutions. Resolution accepting the dedication of right-of-way for Emerald Drive west of Chicago Street. Do want to acknowledge that there is some representatives from Speedway here tonight. So any questions, or is there any interest in hearing from Speedway representatives on this dedication plat?
Questions or comments?
Staff is in full support of the dedication plat as recommended. Council Memo 7218, resolution approving an honorary street name change for Robert Hacker on Essington Road between Canton Farm Road and Hennepin Drive. Any questions, comments on this? Council Memo 7318, resolution approving a sublease with a vendor for entertainment related events at the former Joliet Correctional Center. And if I could, I'd like to turn to our corporate counsel. Marty, is there anything you'd like to comment on this proposed sublease?
No, actually, if you have any questions, though, I would defer them to Chris or myself, so.
Questions,
Mayor?
comments? Yes.
So was this out for bid, or how did we get the one person from out of town when we have people in town that seem to be looking to have had a chance to work on some type of an option?
That's a very, very good question. So I just want to kind of take you back probably until the summertime is when we were discussing kind of taking, getting a lease from the correctional facility to either purchase or lease the property. So at that time, the city, of course, we weren't sure how long this would, number one, would take. So then right around, it was August, we got approached by this particular group who said they would be interested in it. So having that information, then we went back to the state and said, hey, state, we would be interested in doing a lease, knowing that there's a potential tenant to the property. So that took until last December until we got the lease from the state. So then if you did do a bid on the, keep in mind too, we also have a tight time frame of basically 5 years to figure out what we want to do with this property. So if we did do a bid process, that process would probably extend out until late spring, early summer, and then essentially we would lose 1 full year of figuring out what we're going to do with this property. So that's why we did a short term, 1 year with a potential for renewal.
Mayor?
Yes.
So already, because they were first in, we're assuming they're the best fit for this, and they've already proven that they have a problem reading our minutes or our meeting dates when they announced that they are the land or the leasee of this property that they put on, I guess their Facebook page or whatever, saying that they're there. So I don't know that they're the ones that are best fit for this venture.
Well, one thing they did offer up is money.
Okay, is 25,000 enough money?
Well, that's...
Should it be more or less? I mean, I'm not in this business, but there are people here in town that are in this business.
No, I understand. Like I said, those are all great questions. That's why we went with a short-term 1 year lease. We didn't want to lose this season. So,
thank you.
Mr. Regis, do you have anything to add?
Any other questions or comments?
I do. My computer was, so I have to go without it. I had gotten an email from someone there.
Can you get to the microphone so
Sure.
people can hear you? Thank you.
I have to go,
Name and address.
Fly blind on this. Did you get my email, David? I forwarded an email today. Somebody had asked if we,
Yes.
I didn't realize we had such a thing. There's a state fire marshal code for this.
Yes, and I
facility?
responded, I'd be happy to
Yeah, can you
respond.
run?
Yeah, the
computer
question
wasn't
asked
working.
by Councilman Hug had to do with, is this subleasee in compliance with any regulations? And my response to him is one, it was a premature release by the subleasee of their intention to open up this haunted house. Shortly thereafter, a email was received from some state employees, state officials, that there is some state law regulations that pertain to amusement parks, haunted houses, et cetera. So in my response, there will ultimately be a state inspection and state regulations that the subleasee will have to comply with. That will come after the leasee puts together their plans for renovation of the building and addressing not only the state regulations, but they'll also have to address the building code requirements for any kind of renovation to this building. And that's where the city inspector, city building official will also be determining that, yes, they've complied with the building codes and they're eligible for a certificate of occupancy. And of course, they'll also make sure that the state signs off on it, the city building official signs off on it, and then, yes, at that time, there'll be that assurance that they are in compliance with both state and building and any other local codes that may come into play. But again, that's down the road after they finish all those improvements.
And I apologize because I did not have a chance later in the day to go back and look,
that's fine.
You know, on this. And just so people know what I'm talking about, Mayor, council members, did you realize there's an OSFM life safety code for haunted houses? Never heard of such things. So I've learned something new today, so I passed it on to David. Something that specific about haunted houses. This came from an email that I got from someone, so. Thank you, David.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Moving on, under award of contracts, and in the interest of time, let me mention the first two items, 7618, 7718 deal with two contracts. The first is for some exterior fencing at the Route 66 Memorial Stadium, and the second is for some wall padding over at the baseball park. Is there any questions on either one of those contracts, which do come with a positive recommendation of the Public Service Committee? If not, next is authorization to approve an extended service agreement for the video board at the Route 66 Stadium. Also comes with a positive committee recommendation. Next item, approval for a professional service agreement for the water distribution model and master plan, which is kind of phase 2 of the recommended strategic plan for the city's culinary water system. Council Memo 8018, request for authorization to approve a professional service contract for the design, permitting, drafting for the Humboldt Road, Mountain Road to US Route 6 water main project. Next item, request for authorization to approve the Microsoft Premier Agreement. Any questions? And then we get down.
There's a question on that?
Yeah, what is that? I mean, you know what I mean? I'm not.
Let me ask, Dave Brainerd, if you would comment on that particular agreement.
So a Microsoft Premier Agreement allows us to get top tier access if there was ever a real serious situation. Also allows us to get a bundle of support hours. So if we have issues or we're trying to do projects with Microsoft related projects, this includes our SQL Server databases, this includes our Active Directory databases, this includes all versions of Office. It's pretty much a fundamental piece of support for an entity of our size.
Okay.
Thank you.
Does that work?
You'll explain it tomorrow in the committee report.
Let's talk
later. Next items, which kind of go together of sorts. Council Memo 8218, request for authorization to repair a damaged fire apparatus. This is Tower 6, and convert it to a Quint. And 8318, request for authorization to purchase one E1 Metro 100-foot 2017 demonstrator Quint apparatus for the fire department and declare surplus and sell one existing 2008 E1 100-foot ladder truck.
David, now I know there was a long discussion at the meeting prior to this, which delayed our meeting. I came in about halfway through. I don't know if the whole council heard it. Could either Chief Formos or Blaski approach and explain why they're recommending doing this?
Sure, definitely. Could we have Fire Chief and Deputy Fire Chief come forward, please?
Yes, Mayor and Council, thank you for allowing me to address you tonight. Right now we have two council memos that we were bringing forward. One of them is to repair a vehicle that was damaged at Station 6. The other is to purchase a vehicle that we would put into service at Station 1. It's a demonstrator Quint apparatus, and it would go into service at Station 1. And what we would do is we would take out of service at Station 1 the engine and the ladder truck and replace it with a three-man Quint at that three-person Quint at that facility. The damaged vehicle, the Tower 6, would be retrofitted. We would take the tower basket off and retrofit it with just a ladder, and that would go back into service at Station 6, and by doing that, it would free up one individual each day that could be reassigned to fill in for absentee. and likely at Station 1, putting that Quint in service would allow us to free up 3 individuals every day that could be plugged in where there are absences, either due to, sick or long-term illness or injury.
Any questions, comments?
I do. Oh, go ahead.
Chief, could you tell me, how does this improve or impact our public safety with the changes that you're proposing and the new equipment?
Well, what we've been tasked with doing is looking at the overtime, being creative with trying to manage overtime numbers, and also trying to be a little more flexible with the way that we staff vehicles and how many people we have to staff every day. So the Quint comes into that. We looked at what we do is we have a Quint in service at Station 9. It's been in service out there recently since 2015. So what we did when we went to Station 9 with the Quint back in 2015, we had an engine there and a truck there, both with 3 personnel on each. And we combined personnel on the Quint. We had an older model Quint that we put in service out there, and that freed up 3 individuals each day that we were able to add to our floater pool and plug in as we needed for absentee. That's what we're looking at trying to do at Station 1 with introducing a Quint there. Station 6, right now we have a 4-person ladder tower in service. By retrofitting that and making it a Quint, we could drop that down to a 3-person Quint instead of a 4-person ladder tower. So what we're doing is taking the additional people and putting them basically on our bench of floaters and being able to be a little more flexible with filling overtime positions that would have been overtime, they would be filled with this larger floater pool. And while we're also doing that, we're looking at lifting up 3 officers and trying to refill 3 of our 3 positions, the public education officer, the fire inspector, and a new position that we feel is needed in the quality control data analyst type position for our EMS department.
Okay, so just a little follow-up.
Yes.
With that piece. So what I'm not hearing, or maybe I didn't hear, the impact that it will have with all of the changes and the shifting around. Are we going to be able to, am I going to see the same amount of firefighters? It's, God forbid we have something big going on.
Yes, you would still see 17 individuals respond on a structure fire. What we send is 3 engines, a ladder truck, 2 ambulances, and a battalion chief. So that complement of individuals would be the same. At Station 1, instead of a ladder truck and an engine coming out of that station, you would only see the Quint coming out of there. So that would be basically the ladder for that area, and your engines would be coming from Station 3, 4, and 5 to the response. You'd have 2 ambulances also coming in, the battalion chief from Station 1.
Chief, if I may, I know we discussed this in private. I think some of this stemmed from a recent incident where an ambulance was taken out of service. And I know I've told you, I said before, both privately and publicly, that I don't think that should ever happen. The ambulances do 87% of the work in the fire department. So in my opinion, that's the last thing that should ever come out of service. By freeing up these extra people, does this allow us to keep ambulances in service and fully staffed?
Yes, the goal is to keep the ambulances, the 9 ambulances in service in their run areas. As the mayor said, they do the bulk of we do about 17,000 ambulance calls a year. So that would keep those in service. It would also keep an ALS engine in each run area, advanced life support engines. So those engines are able to do much of the same interventions that the ambulance crews can, except they can't transport.
Thank you.
Any
more questions?
Mayor. Chief, I was here for most of the discussion from the Public Safety Committee, but the one thing it's just confusing, you know, and to us that are not involved with it on a day-to-day basis, but recently there was a fire on Lilac Lane off of Black Road. At that, the first responders that came there right then, how many individuals responded there when they first pulled up? How many people were there at the fire?
Well, there should have been 17 people respond.
I mean,
the first in crew was probably Company 5, would have been 5 individuals.
It'll be 5 individuals. And they do a combination of search and rescue plus firefighting?
Well, the first thing they do is they do a risk analysis of the situation, but obviously rescue is number one, our number one priority. So.
And then under with the Quints now, it would still be 5?
There would be, yes, 3 on the Quint and 2 on the ambulance at Station 1. And then the battalion chief. So you'd have 3, 4, 5, 6 people at Station 1 instead of 9. Because we're taking a vehicle out of service.
Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. Chief, I guess I'm a little confused with when you say how many people are going to show up. And I guess if there's only one fire, all the stations can come, if they don't have anything else going on.
Yes.
But if Station 1 ambulance is going on an ambulance call, and then we have a fire, and just the Quint go, you only have 3 people there.
Yes, but that could be that way at any of the other stations also. At Station 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, and 10, well, not 9, 7, 8, and 10, we have an engine and an ambulance in those stations. So at any time, your first in company there could only have 3 individuals.
But if tonight,
at Station 1, if
the ambulance is gone,
there's an ambulance gone, you'll have 6 people plus the battalion chief. You'll have 2 vehicles respond.
And then it's a fire at a structure. Mm-hmm. How many people today would show up at that fire?
17.
No. Out of one.
Out of Station 1.
Right.
At a fire. Depending on where it's at, if it's in one's area, there will be 3 people on the engine, 3 people on the ladder truck, that's 6. 2 people on the ambulance, provided it's in service.
The ambulance is gone to St. Joe's.
Ambulance is gone, so the 3 on the engine, 3 on the truck, that's 6, plus the battalion chief is 7.
Okay, so now we get rid of the ladder, we get rid of the engine, we get the Quint.
4, 3 on the Quint and the battalion chief.
So we're gonna have less people?
Initially, yes. And
initially?
In that run area, yes.
In that run area, okay. And I mean, that's kind of a concern of mine, because I know in the perfect situation, 17 people are gonna show up. In the perfect situation, when there's nothing else going on, in that area at that time. But that's the perfect scenario.
Well, we will always get 17, but it just depends on where they're going to be responding from.
And when they get there.
And yes, the farther, if they're not coming from, if a particular station is busy, then obviously they'll come from a farther away station. So it could impact on response time.
I think Councilman Marjorie.
Yeah.
Chief, Station 1, as I understand, is the most ambulance calls of any of our stations?
Station 1, 5, and 6, all are, any given year, they're bouncing back and forth. They're our 3 biggest ambulance providers.
So following up a little bit with Terry, assuming the ambulance is gone often, why would the Quint, what's the choice of having the Quint there when more bodies are needed potentially in the one district?
Well, the purpose of the Quint, again, is to, free up those 3 individuals where we can put them somewhere else to staff. The Fitch study, looking back at the Fitch study, they said that 98.6% of the time we would have 14 units available to dispatch. So so they're looking at data, and again, I can't tell you exactly where in the city those vehicles would be, but if we were to have a second call, I think that's what you're saying, a second fire or something like that, we should we should have enough vehicles in the city to be able to take in a second still.
Accident on Route 80. Mentioned in the fit study, did they comment on our physical equipment here and recommend or not recommend the Quint?
Well, when they did their study, we did not have the Quint in service. What we had done was we had recently placed the Quint in service at Station 9. So when they looked at the study, they were evaluating the Quint at Station 9. We were again tasked at looking at ways to reduce the overtime. So we did ask them to look at a proposal that we put together, putting a Quint in service at Station 1. I passed that out to the members of the Public Safety Committee, and they did look at that, and they did feel that that would be an option that would be okay for us to do to deal with long-term illness injury. When we did talk with them, though, we did mention that what we would like to do is place 2 squads in service. We realize that Station 1 and the 5 and 6 areas are busy with ambulances. So provided we put the Quint in service at Station 1, we free up some people to add to our floater bench. Then we also want to hire additional people so that we increase our floater bench. And on days where we have extra people, what we would plan on doing is putting a squad in service first at Station 1, a two-person squad at Station 1, and if manning allowed, a 2-person squad at Station 6. And what that would do would be those squads could help chase the ambulances instead of sending out the Quints, because it is tough on those bigger vehicles, those engines, those ladder trucks, to chase around the ambulances. So we'd like to have a smaller SUV type style vehicle with a couple people on them that could chase the ambulances and also respond to the fires. So that, as Councilman Morris was looking at, instead, if we had the Quint in service at Station 1, we'd have 3 on that, 2 on the ambulance would be 5, and then 2 on the squad, provided we had manning for the day to put them on there, would be 7, plus the battalion chief would be 8. So we'd be losing basically 1 person out of that first run area. And if the ambulance is out, hopefully the squad could free up and respond to the fire also.
If I remember right on the fit study, they were talking about us when we're fully staffed at 209.
209 is our
209,
staffing.
which I know we're not at. I don't know exactly where we're at. And I assume with the 3 people going into the office, they're off the physical role of work. So now we're going to be down 3 more people. We all understand money and overtime's an issue, but mathematically, there's no way you can make it work without having overtime unless we hire enough people to get back up to 209. Isn't that
part of the plan? Yes, part of the plan would be to hire 2. What this plan does is it allows us a little more flexibility with having a larger bench instead of going into the day having to staff 51 positions. We would only have to staff 47. That gives us a little larger bench. But like I said, if we do have the extra people, we would staff the squads to bring our numbers up. But you're right, Councilman, we also do need to hire. We're down 12 right now. We have a pending retirement, and then we also have 2 additional people that are on long-term illness or injury that appear to be moving towards the direction of not coming back.
On 8218, where we're talking about repair damage of the apparatus, changing it over to a Quint, that has the basket, or removed the basket is what's stated. Do we have another vehicle with a basket on, or this was our only one?
This was the only one. This was a vehicle that was purchased back in 2001. At the time, towers were really popular, I believe. We'd never had one, and the chief at the time wanted a tower in the area at our department. The tower's a nice, luxury type vehicle, in my opinion, if you have the money to be able to have it in reserve, but a day-to-day vehicle on the street, it might not be the right fit for 6's area. It would be great to have in a reserve capacity, but right now, with not having capital funds to purchase vehicles, as you can see, this whole plan is kind of built out of having CDBG money, having some trade-in money from a vehicle that we were planning on trading, and then buying a demonstrator model too. We're not, usually we go out and custom build these things, but we realize we're saving a couple $100,000 by buying a vehicle that has been a demonstrator model and has a few miles on it. So we're trying to, look at the dollars and cents too by doing that.
Staying with that thought for a minute, the $250,000 that we'd be getting on a trade-in versus saving that or using that as a backup. I'm sure the vehicle was worth more than $1 million when it started, and I don't know the shape of it, but is $250,000 enough money to trade it in?
It's in good shape. It was, I believe it was about 780,000 10 years ago when we purchased it. So 250 doesn't seem like too bad of a trade-in value on fire apparatus. We do have, if we were to put the Quint in service at Station 1, we would have the ladder truck there, and we also have another ladder truck, Truck 11, that would be our backup ladders, because we realize that these Quints will break down, and we'll have to have a plan when they need to be serviced, and that type of thing. We would put an engine and a ladder truck in service like we do now. That's what we have in service at Station 6, is a ladder and an engine in service there while the tower is out of service. But we do have those reserve vehicles.
Thank you.
Mayor, just one more follow-up question. Chief, going back to that fire on Lilac, which stations responded to that fire?
You help me out? Is that the one where the police did the CPR? The police, yeah.
Yes.
So they were first.
The police were the first.
I think.
Yeah, but I mean, which fire? Was it 5s? Was it 6s?
I'm just guessing by response, it would have been probably company 6 first.
Okay.
Followed by company 5, and then probably 7s, I'm guessing, or 8s, probably 8s.
So then under the Quint scenario, who would respond then? Would it be the Quint from 1?
No, they wouldn't respond to that.
They wouldn't?
No.
Okay.
And if the tower was in place, currently we had engine 6, truck 6 because of the accident. And Quint would have responded anyway, because Tower 6 is a Quint.
Okay.
And it would have been Tower 6 out of Station 6 along with 5s.
Okay.
And again, is.
Okay, thanks.
Chief, I think you had mentioned, just to kind of follow up on Councilman Mudrin's question about having, being short of personnel. Is your objective still, and I asked this question at the Public Safety Committee, to hire 6 people kind of pronto, soon?
Yeah, we want to at least 6. We feel the number 6, 7, something in that area is manageable for our training officer. Kathy Franzen she's been instructed by the city manager to start doing the backgrounds. We have a third-party company that does our backgrounds, our psychs, our polys. So we're going to start on those, and hopefully we'll get
So we're going to get some more guys out there.
Yes.
And
some more people, firefighters, some more people.
Firefighters, yeah.
And our candidate number 3 and 4, I believe, are female candidates.
And then you mentioned the Fitch study real quick, and then this memo you had passed out. It's a lot of reading. I didn't have a chance to do it here up in the last couple of minutes, but what is this actually telling us? You had asked.
It's basically that they vetted our plan on overtime reduction, and we asked them to kind of vet putting a Quint in service at Station 1 to help us out with building some more floaters into our mix. And then also we said that on days when we could afford the staff a squad at Station 1 and Station 6, that we would do that. And they vetted that out, and they felt that that was a reasonable plan.
So you ran your plan by them and they said?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And we also ran it by ISO to see if there would be any changes in the ISO rating, and they came back and said no. Insurance Safety Organization.
I know what that is. Yeah, what did they say when you?
They said no. We would remain a 2.
Okay. That's it.
What was you cited that it wasn't at the committee meeting? 98% of the time. Can you explain what that was? I got by me real quick.
I think what that means is that was a stat out of the Fitch study. I think what they meant was looking at the number of pieces of the vehicles that we have on the street. We have 9 ambulances, 9 engines, or 9 vehicles at the stations, plus a ladder truck and 2 BC cars. I think what they're saying is, for the most part, 98% of the time, we should have at least 14 vehicles available in the city after other vehicles are accounted for on calls. Because
Not 14
everybody's
people, 14 vehicles.
Yes. Everybody's not on a call at the same time. So they're checking in, they're checking out. If we do have a structure fire, we do have 17 people committed to the structure fire. And then what we do is we move vehicles around the city so that we don't leave any area unprotected. So we do what we call move-ups. So ambulances, engines will move around to kind of spread the butter a little thinner on the bread, I guess you'd say, so that we don't leave any areas that don't have protection.
And when we hire 6 to replace those that haven't been filled yet, that will bring us to 200?
That would bring us to 200, yes, 6 would. We're anticipating the retirement in that, and then we'd still be 9 short of our manning, our budgeted number.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, Chief, the 3 positions, I believe it was 3 that you're gonna move up into, like, the office?
Yes.
They have to be firemen, or they're not, like, civilians can fill any of those roles? Or is that a contractual thing with the union, or is that just for experience, like to train? I think it was somebody in the school.
Yeah, well, those are, the 2 of the 3 positions are positions that were once held by the Fire Officers Union, the inspector, and the public education officer. And the public education officer would be the person that we would task with trying to develop a cadet program for us. That person would also be tasked at trying to run like a citizens fire academy with the goal and getting out into the schools again. The goal is to create a pipeline of youth that are interested in possibly a career in the fire service, getting them to do a cadet program with us, and having them do some ride time with us to see if it's something they want to do, if they want to invest in the education that's required to do this, which is usually getting their EMTB license through JUCO, Joliet Junior College, and then moving on through either Silver Cross EMS or Morris Hospital to get their paramedic license. So that's what he would be that person would be tasked at. The inspector would help us with plan reviews, follow-up inspections, and the data analyst quality control person would help our EMS department that runs 17,000 calls a year, looking at the calls, dissecting them, seeing if there's areas that we need improvement on, if there's skills that we're falling down on that we haven't utilized that much, that type of thing. And computers are becoming such a big item within, public safety. We have them in all of our vehicles. Every one of our ambulances, when they go out and have a patient contact, they're doing a patient care report. So that's where that person would be coming into. And we would also utilize their skills in evaluating new software and new computers for the vehicles.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mayor, if I could, the one thing I did want to share with the council tonight is that it's come to my attention, one thing that hasn't been disseminated and shared with our fire department personnel is the so-called Fitch study that we referred to tonight. It's my understanding that that is a document that a presentation was made by the authors, but I think that study has not been disseminated or hasn't been necessarily available for the department personnel to review, to discuss, and to engage in some dialogue. I would offer, my opinion that I think that is one thing that's kind of lacking in the dialogue and discussion, even though there is some time-sensitive issues, such as this demo. And I've seen these, sometimes you can reap some good quick savings on opportunities like this. Plus we've got community development block grant funds that are available for this purchase. But it does bother me because I've always been a proponent when you have one of those studies done by someone like Fitch. I think the more we can put that out there, to not only all the firefighters, but for the chief and the deputy chief to have that dialogue discussion. I think that is one thing that has kind of been missing from what this last year since the the completion of that report for some robust dialogue with all concerned. So I share that, at least that observation. And the second thing is, I think we do want to be careful that the focus right now is on the repair of one vehicle, the acquisition of a quint. I think we want to be very careful going too far beyond that. And just because, as we all know, currently in this year, we have a $500,000 structural deficit in our general fund. As we continue on this year and get looking at the 5-year projection, again, let's keep our focus on this equipment. And as the chief has indicated, that these proposals would basically be replacing 2 very expensive apparatuses for one, leading to long-term savings. We're having fewer apparatuses, but there's no doubt the implications of which and the impact on personnel organization is something that I just personally wish there was that more robust dialogue discussion with all concerned, especially within the fire department. So I think that is one of the disadvantages to moving ahead quickly on this, because there hasn't been that dialogue with the department as a whole.
Well, to that end, that's an interesting point. And I was approached by representatives of Local 44 last week. My recommendation was that they approach you and sit down with you to discuss what can be done. Chief, you have the overtime numbers, I would guess. I know for the month of December, we paid out over $300,000 for overtime for the fire department.
It was, yes, I don't track, Chief Blasky does, but I think that number is.
So that's $10,000 a day, which is obscene. It's not our money, that's taxpayer money, and it can't be justified. So I guess my question is back to you, Mr. Hales. Has anyone approached you to try to work with you or open discussion or dialogue like I recommended last week?
Not directly. Again, I'm still in that process of reaching out to both union officials, rank and file, but I think I did recall, though, in one of those meetings, someone referred to the Fitch study and that, it hadn't been made available. And that is one thing I'm going to correct, because even as I've been going through that report, I'm not all the way through it yet, but I don't see anything why we should not make that open and available, even put it on our website. I think that's something even the public ought to have access to. These are done usually for full release to a community. I haven't seen anything of a real confidential nature yet from that analysis, so much of it, and even some of the conclusions we've heard about tonight. But I certainly would be willing to join with the fire chief and the deputy chief to have dialogue with all the firefighters as we get that report out there. But we got to keep in mind, we may lose that opportunity to purchase that one demonstrator quint. There's few of those around. If we don't act on that, we may lose that opportunity. And yes, it could cause us to pay more money, but just an observation to share with you tonight.
Yes. Just for clarity, myself and Councilman Garrell looked at each other. I think it was just a misstatement. We don't have a structural deficit of 500,000. We have a structural deficit of 5.5 million.
Oh yeah,
to work on. Right. I don't want that to go in the newspaper and have conflicting.
That would be great if it was only the 500,000.
The other thing I was going to say, excuse me, is thank you, Mr. Hales, David, for bringing that forward. The police and fire. We had the what do you call it? The consultants report.
Right.
The previous city manager, I brought it up. Why is this available to? I talked to a couple of the firemen who said they've not seen it, and the public, as you said, should see it. Paid $50,000 for each of them, and they have some good stuff in them. Thank you for bringing it forward. Marty, remember I brought it up to you once or twice too. Marty was overwhelmed because he did a great job, stepped in. You didn't, but the previous city manager said, "Well, it's got to be finalized." I said, "Finalized? We already had the presentation. We voted on it, and we paid him $50,000. How much more final is that?" So if we can get that out there, so the firemen can see what Fitch had to say, so the public can see, because we're talking about issues that they may be concerned
public safety.
about. Right. Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor, just one question.
Yes.
Chief, you know, overtime is a big number, but with these 6 vacancies filled, that should decrease overtime, I would think, wouldn't it?
Yes, any additional people that we
Right.
bring in.
So I mean, if these positions, for whatever reason, and nobody can tell me why these positions weren't filled over the last couple of years, overtime would not be the issue it is today if those had been, it would be no issue, but not to the degree it is, correct?
There would still be overtime, but.
Correct.
yeah, of course, if we had some.
But not to the degree it is right now. I'm guessing. I mean.
I would, yes.
I would
Yes.
think, yeah.
Well, again, I've gotten conflicting information, and I don't know if you have the sick time numbers, but with the current contract, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, if 10 people call in sick, like happened a couple weekends ago on a given day, you have to hire 10 back, correct? Are you allowed to go with a lower number?
If my bench is not big enough, if I don't have enough floaters, and that's the reason behind trying to reduce this number from 51 to 47, is I have to staff, currently I have to staff 51 spots on a daily basis. So if I'm at minimum, if I'm at minimum and, you know, I've got 10-man day and everybody's on, you know, vacations and Kelly days and whatnot, scheduled time off is at the maximum and all my floaters are being used to cover for the people that are off on sick or on scheduled time off on Kelly's and vacation days, then yes, if my bench isn't big enough, then I'm gonna endure overtime, and that's where we're at right now. We're almost 1 for 1.
Any other questions or comments?
I have one more, and it's really not, I don't think, for the chief, but it was the CBG money that the 400 and some thousand.
Mm-hmm.
And it may just be me. I don't recall us doing it, you know, for equipment, for fire trucks with that money in the past.
In the past, I don't ever recall it. But that's not to say that it
And I
happened.
just see other, and don't get me wrong, I mean, I'm still, you know, understanding, and as was pointed out to me earlier, the chief knows, as Larry said, you all know what you're doing there. But I was just concerned about that. The CBG money. Not that I don't feel it shouldn't be for public safety, but I just was wondering why, you know, in the past we haven't, or if we knew this before, why hadn't we tapped into that?
Well, in fact, I'll just share with you, when that came to my attention, I met with Jeff Sturr, the Neighborhood Services Director, because I wasn't familiar that that would have been allowed. But he brought the regulations, we took a look at it, and lo and behold, because a lot of the use of this particular engine would be in the core area of the city, where there is, you know, kind of your meeting districts that have been identified as low to moderate income. He showed that the regulations would allow that. It was a surprise to me too, and I think that came about too, as the chief had mentioned to Jeff or others, that, you know, we're struggling to come up with funding in tight times. And is there any other ways to be a little innovative? Now, in doing so, that is the same amount of money that isn't necessarily going to housing or isn't going to recreational equipment, as you have seen, I think, in this last budget year. So it is a trade-off, but public safety is being enhanced because you're making an acquisition that otherwise maybe we couldn't afford.
Right, but I mean, are we enhancing public safety or are we saving overtime? And I guess that's what I just need to figure out. Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
I do have one question, okay? There's all this talk about a quint and ladder trucks and tower trucks. So, you know, I'm sure there's people that are watching this meeting that want to know what this is. And personally, I need to know the difference. So how many people does it take to run a quint?
The quints are contractually, we have three people assigned to a quint. We have an officer, an apparatus operator, and a firefighter. We have the same complement of people assigned to operate a quint as we do an engine, which carries the water and hose, or a ladder truck, which carries basically ground ladders and an aerial ladder.
So does a Quint have more than a regular ladder truck has?
What a Quint has is it carries not only hose, it carries a ladder, and it also has water. So this particular Quint that we're looking at will have a tank, a 500-gallon water tank. It'll have a complement of hose, both a tack hose, smaller diameter hose that we'll be able to bring inside a building, or a larger diameter hose for a water supply. And then it will also have a 100-foot aerial ladder on it, and it will have a full complement of ground ladders. So what extension ladders.
But the only thing we won't have anymore is a bucket.
This vehicle will not have a bucket. We will not have a vehicle with a bucket in the Joliet Fire Department then.
Okay,
correct.
Thank you.
Yes. I would say I'm happy that you were able, with Jeff Sturr, to be creative on the funding. But Councilman, I would say, don't be so surprised that we're doing something different with it, because it fits the grant, correct? I mean, yes. I don't think the city, while the city's never used the grant to buy fire equipment before, it's never used the grant to buy a private apartment building either. And that happened too. So apparently there's some interesting and creative things that can be done with CDBG.
I don't know.
And there's a new director too in that spot. Alfredo had moved on and Jeff is working there, so I don't, but you're right, I can't remember those dollars before ever being expended on a fire vehicle.
And I'm sorry, man. And again, I have no problem with public safety, but I just have a problem when it's used to enhance public safety. Because again, right now, my position is we have 2 trucks. If we needed a truck and didn't have a truck or that it broke down, to me would be okay. A good place to tap in to get the funding for this truck that we're replacing a truck. We are replacing 2 trucks that, from what I've heard so far, that don't need to be replaced. We're trying to, recover the overtime and move some people into the administration, I guess, or into the office. So that's why I was just kind of not surprised, but again, it was a good, idea, to look into the CBG money. But I do know that over the past years, and it's always good, as the councilman said, to do things different, do things new, and look for other ways. But that's, the money was kind of earmarked for other things in the past. That's all, again. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Moving on, Council Memo 8418, request for authorization to renew portable radios maintenance agreement. Any questions? And then what I'd like to do is just under amendments, change orders, payments. We have 2 items, change order related to the West Side Wastewater Treatment Plant, and a change order and final payment for the 2017 biosolids disposal contract. Any questions on those 2? If not, I think that brings us to the end of the regular meeting agenda for tomorrow night. Mayor?
So next we have public comments. Is there anyone who would like to make a comment? John.
John Sheridan. First, I'd like to make a comment about saving some money on the budget. Turn off the air conditioning. It's freezing back there. Gosh.
Ooh, thank you.
Yeah, really. I mean, this is what, 12 degrees outside or below. Anyway, I'd like to clarify a few points that was made tonight on the memo 6318 on 207 Bridge Street. First of all, when we talk about a valid rental certificate, it's quite obvious. I'll show you some pictures real quick. Pass them out. Parking lot's not paved.
Thank you.
You share that? Share this one. This is a company who's been in business for 35 years, according to the gentleman, and they know the city ordinances for rental property better than I do and better than you do, I'm quite sure. And so I don't know how they can have a valid certificate. In addition, the boarded windows, and when you fill out this application for variance and back in December, curtain was hanging out the front door on this particular picture in the city's documents, and it's still hanging out the front door. Also, he stated, the city told him that there was a rental property, R3, well, he didn't use the word R3. He said it was okay for rental property. But in his own affidavit, on question number 2, it says, what unique circumstance exists which mandate a variance? His own writing, that he put down there, that this property has purchased as a 2-unit building. It was listed in the MLS as a 2 to 4 units. It also had an appraisal done and listed it as R2. Folks, if you've been in business for 35 years, you do your due diligence and do your homework and find out that it's an R2, you better put a contingency statement in your contract to state that I don't want the property unless it can be properly zoned as an R3. So to sit here from 2015 and do nothing with the property until, uh-oh, I got caught, the parking lot's not paved, I better go do it, is crazy. Because Unity CDC, we have, what, 13 neighborhood organizations or whatever, and I sit there and listen to people complain about ProTown and problems with them taking care of their property and having to turn in a complaint to get it fixed, etc. So absentee landlords, we don't like them in our neighborhood organizations because they generally don't take care of their property. Now, there may be a few out there to do, but the bulk of them do not take care of their property. We've had enough. So I ask you to deny that request for the R3 zoning. Thank you.
Request to deny?
Deny, that's
Okay.
correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, for that clarification. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to make a public comment?
Ted Parks, 609 East Blading Drive, Joliet. I work for the fire department. I was up here for the safety meeting. I talked a little bit about the toolbox issue. I'd like to invite every council member to Station 1 to take a look at Truck 1 and Engine 1 and how you're going to combine all those tools into one vehicle. So you guys are all welcome to come down to Station 1 and take a look. And then Chief talked about 2 squads. I don't know how much a squad costs, but I talked to Scotty Shear there, and we're guessing about $200 to $250 a piece. He didn't say anything about that cost. And if this quint goes through, our fire department will be down 21 guys in less than a year. And you're talking about 17 guys coming to a fire. Well, Station 3 is out by the track. In your area, you got Engine 4 coming and Engine 1 pretty quickly. Now, Station 5 could come, the bridge could be up, the railroad tracks could be coming by at Jackson Street. Station 3 is quite a ways away, so you may get 17 people, but when your house is on fire, you could double in size every minute. So again, you're all welcome to come to Station 1 and take a look at Truck 1 and Engine 1, and how are you going to fit that on one vehicle? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Eric Mattson, 1505 Caton Avenue in Joliet, President of the Fire Officers Association. I think Councilman Morris hit it right on the head. And are we doing this to put 3 guys upstairs? Or are we doing this to help out? Because it's going to affect public service when these 3 guys go upstairs. The people on the line are the people that do the work. I don't know how I think we have an issue. We've had an issue since 2008 when we lost the 3 positions. They were tough times. They took them through attrition. With 2008, they've been gone. All of a sudden, they want them back. And they want the people on the line to pay for them. Sure, there's an overtime issue. We haven't hired the people. They leave. They die of cancer. They don't get replaced. And now we're facing the tough facts of stretching out that rubber band so thin with the quint. And for 22 years, there's one that we have. I'm gonna be like Ted. I'm gonna one up them though. I'm gonna invite you to Station 9 to take a look at it. And it works out there. I'll tell everybody, it works out there. It won't work down here. I know I'm not the chief. And the chief is the chief. You guys will decide. But before you make that decision, I think we need to think some more. What's the guy Deming who says, "In God we trust. Everything else, check the data." We've had the Fitch study. They came here. Nobody looks at it. Let's look at the data. 1, 5, and 6 is where the work is. That 1 goes all over. We're not going to scare anybody about the bridge being up or anything. It's a workhorse. That station is the workhorse. Ambulance 1 is gone. Ambulance 5 is gone, ambulance 6, the fire on Lilac Avenue, it worked out well, the ambulance was at the hospital, you had 2 pieces of equipment there. Those 2 people, they're laying in the front yard. It takes 6 people to put them in the ambulance and get them taken care of. It's time, it's not about the people, and when we talk about transparency and what the chief says, you're gonna get 17 people. It might take 6 minutes. I don't know. I'm not gonna scare you, thank you. Make your decision.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Everybody, thank you for letting us speak. I'm Jim Blake. I live at 1220 Mayfield. I'm the captain at Joliet Fire Station 9. If you want to come out, I'll invite you to come to our station, and I'll show you the difference between a quint and a truck and an engine. And we have been reduced from an engine and truck to a quint. And what they were trying to tell you is a Swiss Army knife does a lot of things, but it doesn't do a lot of things well. When you combine a truck and an engine, they do a lot of things, but they don't do a lot of things well. I've been on, well, we've had a couple of fires out there, a double fatal, and we also had a fire where we had a rescue, and it was just us. It was a quint with 3 people and the ambulance with 2. I had 2 guys go to the fire to fight the fire. 2 guys went and did the rescue of an invalid woman, and the guy that was pumping the truck had to bring the cot to the front door. Response times, when we lose that extra piece of equipment, we got to bring an extra piece of equipment from a longer distance away, so it is going to affect the response times, especially when you get out Station 9, from Station 10 or Station 8. If either of them are out, we're alone. And we were alone that night for a long time. So if you want to come out to Station 9, we'll be happy to show you around, show you the difference between the 2. We're not at odds with the chief. It's a professional disagreement, okay? He's trying to do as much as he can with as little as he's getting, and I think he's doing a good job. But please don't tie his hands, you know, with less money. You know, manpower, you're reducing manpower, and we need manpower in the first few minutes of a fire, especially if there's rescues. And there's a lot of little fires that don't get registered as a structure fire that our guys have gotten in there and stopped before they become big fires. And that's by getting the guys there in time to do that. So I hope we can reconsider this and hire the manpower that needs to be hired so we can reduce the overtime that we're so worried about and get this fire department back where we should be.
Well, if I could add to that,
Yes, sir.
my suggestion that the union heads meet with the city manager, it's kind of to address all that. Because there's a lot of issues, and obviously money is the underlying issue.
Yes.
We hire people, but at what rate? At the current rate that we're paying? At a lower rate? I mean,
That's not my pay scale I understand that we are not flush with money like we were when the riverboats first came into town, and I know.
well, not only not flush with money, I was a policeman back then, and the city salaries have skyrocketed since then. I think I got hired here making $33,000 a year. Wasn't that long ago. So there's a couple issues that are at play, and again, I will just repeat that as a suggestion. I think people need to sit down and talk and find middle ground that everyone can live with. That's good for fire, it's good for the city council, it's good for the taxpayers in Joliet. That's my suggestion. I hope someone listens.
It looks like we got a lot of work to do between all of us, don't we?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council Bert Schuster, Joliet Firefighters, Local 44 Vice President, 26210 West Lookout Point Court, Shanahan. A couple things the chief said, and to feed on what the captain said, we're not at odds with the chief. He's only doing what he's able to work with, but we have a adopted budget that has 212 in there, 213 counting the EMA. And if we were able to operate at that number, we wouldn't have the issues we have. Mr. Mayor, I agree. I did not have any contact from anybody saying to contact the city manager. I will do that as soon as tomorrow morning. We're not at no time have we ever stood and said, no, we're not gonna work with you. We've worked with you guys, and not this council, but the council, as long as I've been on, and since 2008, a good number of times. So at no point are we saying we're not willing to work. We just didn't know this was happening until we saw it on the agenda. And that's why everybody's been contacted, everybody's been, because we didn't know it was coming and it hit us. So that's why we just request the time that you guys can look at some of the stuff. Couple things to point out. 209 was the number. Last time we had that was 2012. So the two squads that are being told that they'll be in service, we haven't had that. You wouldn't have it any time since 2012. That was the last time that we had 209 to work with, and we've had an overtime issue since then. 2012 was when we had the SAFER grant. We got the money from the government to pay for the firefighters. That was at 209. Ever since then, when they left, we'd get a couple, not the full complement. So that's that. And then does Station 6 fit into the possible grant money? Because I know that Quint that's coming back, that could definitely be replaced. It's been on since 2000. If you talk to mechanics, it's there more than it's in the station, which would reduce the overtime because you wouldn't be paying the extra guy per the contract for the Quint to be in service there. So that's something to think about. All right. Any questions? I can stick around and answer any of them. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
If I can just, we've had some, a number of people come up here, both now and at the committee meeting. And I don't think necessarily anybody's intentionally doing it. In fact, Mr. Madsen kept saying, I'm not trying to scare nobody, but I want the public to know that we have a very good fire department, good command staff, good force. That some people have come up here today, and I think somebody mentioned they live in Elwood or Shanahan, Troy Township, Troy Fire District, Morris Fire, all those, right? We're at 2 ISO. Those that live in Shanahan or those that live in Morris are at 4, 5, and sometimes 6A. We're a damn good department right now as it is. We're at 2 ISO. I challenge somebody to find another 2 ISO within 10 miles of us. And that needs to be clear, because I don't want the public to be scared. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Matt Hornbuckle. I live at 1512 Douglas. I've been a firefighter with the city for since 2000. There's been a lot of stuff thrown around today. I came from the building trades, and if any of you know anybody that's worked with their hands, worked with tools, they'll tell you a combination tool does not work well. It does some things, some people have talked about it. It will do some things okay, but it doesn't do everything well. This Quint they're talking about buying for Station 1, you've heard some talk about what tools are gonna fit on it, what's not gonna fit on it. Well, every vehicle we've always bought, we spec them for their run areas so that they had the tools that the chief deemed necessary at that time for those run areas. We talk about Tower 6 and the basket coming off. Well, that vehicle was bought because you have all those senior citizen high-rises in the central district. That's why there's a basket on there. So God forbid, the Kennedy building, there's a high fire up there, we can get people out without using the elevators if they were, in that situation. So that's why that basket was on there originally. You have a number of those with senior citizens. So think about that before we think about lopping that basket off the top of that. And I think just with this new Quint, it's a demo model. So it hasn't been spec'd for our needs. So even though none of us agree with the chief, and I would like to say this, that when the chief was a company officer, him and I were in some pretty hairy situations where we almost died. So I have respect for that man. I don't agree with him on this, because I think when you look at the way we respond on this side of town, we need those people and we need them now. So just take that under advisement and think about the fact that we're buying somebody's demo vehicle that wasn't spec'd for here. Let's put this off a little bit. Let's talk about it. Let's try to come to some understanding between us, between them, and between you. That's all I'm asking.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment? Okay, I know that there is a request for a closed session. So is there a motion to go into closed session to discuss personnel, collective bargaining, land acquisition or conveyance, and pending litigation, after which the meeting will be adjourned?
So moved.
And motioned and seconded to go into closed session. And Councilman Dickinson?
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin?
Aye.
Councilman Girl?
Aye.
Councilman Hug?
Aye.
Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin?
Aye.
Councilwoman Kluman?
Aye.
Councilman Turk?
Aye.
Okay, and we'll adjourn in there.
Does your thing charge?